a lot of letters. Gee, I wonder what it spells.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and this week I'm looking at The Last of Us Part 2, released by Naughty Dog in 2020 exclusively for the PlayStation 4. Fuck this game. The game opens on a guitar, which will now be an extremely important symbolic device. Joel is cleaning it and telling Tommy about the game I wish I was talking about. They get on their horses and ride back to Jackson, where Tommy tells Joel that he wouldn't have done any different in his shoes. Remember that. We cut to that night and reconnect with Ellie as she sketches in her notebook. Joel walks in to talk to her, and we get the first instance of this game not understanding how to continue Joel and Ellie's relationship, as their dialogue now feels awkward and disjointed.
They told me a joke, and I thought about you. It's, oh shoot, no, I forgot it. Something about a clock. How do you...
Joel, it's pretty late and I gotta get up in a few hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna get out of your hair, just,
Joel gives Ellie the guitar from earlier and sings her a song before scheduling a lesson tomorrow so she can learn how to play.
What is the downside to eating a clock? It's time-consuming.
Enjoy any semblance of fun this game gives you as much as you can. Ellie goes to sleep and wakes up 4 years later? Why? The 20-year time jump at the beginning of the first game made sense as it gave time for the infection to spread and have a big impact on the world, but how the fuck does shooting ahead 4 years service the story in any positive way? As we'll see later, the game continuously had to flash back to fill in major gaps in the story, so just start there! Anyway, Ellie is 18 now and is woken up by this man, Jesse, the only good new character in this game. Ellie mentions a kiss she had with Jesse's ex Dina because the writers consulted the CW staff when creating the script. Need more proof? Well, how about the fact that Ellie is randomly mad at Joel for standing up for her when someone insulted her and her friend? Jesse brings Ellie to see said insulter, Seth, who gives Ellie a probably delicious steak sandwich as an apology. But why try to forgive someone for what seems like a drunken mistake when you can just virtue signal?
What you got there?
Bigot sandwiches.
Yeah, forgiveness. Stay mad at anyone who upsets you in any way forever. Ellie is tasked with scouting some creek trails with Dina, but she's too busy with a snowball fight, leading to the one and only time Ellie feels like the Ellie we know as she royally fucks up these little shit. They head out on their trial and we cut to a random lodge? Okay. Yeah, get ready for a lot of cutting back and forth because this is our introduction to Abby, the other main character of this game, because that's what people waited 7 years for, to play as a total stranger. And as much as I fucking hate that I have to clarify this, none of my comments toward Abby are in any way influenced by her buffness. I watch wrestling, I have no problem seeing women that could fold me into a pretzel in their sleep. Abby sets out with this guy, Owen, who, as we'll see later, is just a great guy. He shows her Jackson off in the distance, and they make vague statements about someone they're looking for potentially being in there. They go back and forth on how to even get to him if he's in there when, like, what's stopping them from just approaching the city casually and asking for entry? A giant city like that clearly isn't opposed to having people enter it. Owen says he wants to consult the others on their team before making a move, which makes Abby very upset for no reason. He says they want the same thing, but he doesn't want it at any cost and heads off, leaving Abby alone to get closer to Jackson. She encounters some infected along the way, and we get to see her insane ability to just beat the ever-loving fuck out of them. But, like, shouldn't the infected die off in the cold? They aren't undead, they're regular humans infected with a fungus. Their body should still succumb to the environment, no? Abby continues through groups of infected until she finds horse tracks and we cut back to Ellie and Dina because fuck pacing, I guess.
You know how you're gonna die?
Ooh, let me guess. You're gonna kill me? Did I ruin your punchline?
No. Maybe. Fuck you.
Enjoy it while it lasts. They stop in an old residential area to scavenge for supplies exactly like the first game and take out some infected on their way to entering an old shopping center filled with spores.
Mask's on. Got it.
Yeah, in case you forgot, no one aside from Joel, Tommy, and Maria know that Ellie is immune. They get trapped and have to fight through more infected before finding a way out into a snowstorm, which causes them to take shelter in a library. And the library's basement happens to have a massive stash of dead weed. My favorite HBO show. This leads to Dina and Ellie getting high and engaging in some HLA, because that's what people waited 7 years to see. The little girl they viewed as a daughter figure having sex. Thanks, Naughty Dog! And now we're back to Abby. Great. She runs through the snowstorm and away from a horde of infected before being saved by Joel. Hear that? Saved. By Joel. She would be dead if not for Joel. Joel saved her life. But even still, knowing how cautious and cynical Joel and Tommy have always been, I'm sure they'll just go on their way.
I'm Tommy. That's Joel.
What? Abby says they can take shelter with her friends in their cabin and they ride off right back to Ellie. They aren't making this any easier. Ellie tells Dina that her tattoo and underlying chemical burn were done to cover up her bite mark, revealing to her that she's immune. Jesse arrives in the library and catches them before they can get dressed because haha awkward drama, and brings up a very good point.
People are counting on you, you get that?
He tells them that Joel and Tommy haven't returned from their patrol, and Ellie sets out to find them. And now we cut back to Abby as the three of them arrive at the cabin. Now, surely Tommy and Joel will be a lot more cautious and secretive with the group of total strangers they just met 5 seconds ago.
We do. A few hours down the hill. Y'all should come back with us, restock before you head out.
Appreciate it. I'm Mel, by the way.
Tommy, this is my brother.
Joe.
God fucking damn it. Everyone reacts to hearing Joel's name, and Abby decides to repay Joel's daring rescue by shooting him in the leg at point blank range with a shotgun. As this bullshit plays in the background, let me ask a valid question. How in the did they know this was the right Joel? Yes, Abby is looking for Joel Miller, but she has no idea that Joel is the right one. What, has she just gone around killing everyone named Joel? What if she said Joel Miller, and then he was like, no, I'm Joel Smith? What the would she do then? Abby swings a golf club at Joel's head to distract from this dumpster fire, and it swings us right back to Ellie as she finds the cabin and enters it to see...
Please don't shoot. Joel, please get up. No!
Yep. Just like that, Joel's dead. After 5 meaningless minutes of gameplay. Fuck this game. Let me get this straight right away. It's not the fact that Joel dies that upsets me and makes me hate this game with a burning passion that gives my life extra purpose. It's how it's done and how the character is treated up to this moment. Like shit. He and Ellie are weirdly distant at the start of the game, immediately ruining the best fucking part of the first one, and we have no fucking clue why, because these hack writers put more stock in shock moments than the actual strong narrative storytelling that made the first game work. Need more proof? Well, in order for Joel to die, they had to have him act the complete opposite of how we know him to act. In the first game, he didn't give a shit about anybody. All he cared about was his survival. Yes, he cared about Tess and grew to care about Ellie, but that was after time elapsed. To Joel, Abby was no different than this person.
Keep driving, Tommy.
Or this person.
He ain't even hurt.
Or even this person. And while it's entirely possible that he changed drastically in the 4-year gap, we shouldn't have to fill in those massive gaps ourselves in order for this shit to work. For such a strong 180 character, you have to fucking show how it happened. And then there's Tommy, the dumb who spills all the information on the town and who he and his brothers are to complete and total strangers. They could have been bandits that would go off to destroy and raid the town. You know, like the ones that tried it in the first fucking game. And you want to know the worst part about all of this? Those fucks over at Naughty Dog lied to everybody. Someone already did the work for me and compiled all the bullshit scenes of Joel in the trailer that aren't in the fucking game. That's not keeping the mystery alive. It's blatant false fucking advertising for the sake of a gotcha moment that completely derails the entire fucking story, destroys your suspension of disbelief, and gives the rest of the game an impossible hurdle to jump. Joel's death had the potential to be one of the most emotional moments in video game history, like an exponentially sadder version of Sarah's death, but instead, it's obviously and undeniably a slapdash rush job to subvert expectations that wasted and ruined one of the greatest fucking fictional characters to grace a video game. Fuck this game. Oh, and one more plot point that makes no fucking sense. Abby and her crew are worried about the citizens of Jackson coming after them for killing Joel, yet leave Ellie and Tommy, the only 2 witnesses, alive and well to just return to Jackson and tell everyone what happened. This was the moment. This was the moment that pulled me out of the game, and no attempts to draw me back in succeeded. Fuck this game. Back in Jackson, Tommy visits Ellie and tells him they won't be going after Joel's killers because he's worried about the city being hit by hunters again. First First off, he just said earlier that he would go full scorched earth to save a loved one, and I'm supposed to believe he wouldn't do the same or worse to avenge a loved one? Secondly, now he's worried about the town being hit by hunters, yet he was eager to spill all of the details about Jackson to a group of heavily armed strangers! And then, Ellie says Joel would be halfway to Seattle, where Abby and her crew are from, if either her or Tommy died, and Tommy says that's wrong! F you, Tommy! Joel would burn anyone alive that got between him and vengeance for a loved one. Oh. Ellie says she's leaving tomorrow no matter what, but agrees when Tommy asks her to give him a day to talk to Maria and see what he can do. And then we cut to Joel's gravestone. Yep, his gravestone. No wake, no funeral, just a gravestone. These writers couldn't have moved on from Joel's death faster if they tried. Ellie enters Joel's house with Dina and finds a box on his bed with the watch Sarah gave him like 24 years ago now and a revolver that she takes. She goes back downstairs to see Maria, who tells him that Tommy left on his own to find Joel's killers, and she lets Ellie and Dina go off to Seattle with a horse to find him. So let me get this straight. Tommy didn't want Ellie going to Seattle alone because it was too dangerous, but is all too ready to go to Seattle alone? We hear that Ellie has proven herself as a capable fighter, so why wouldn't he want to go with her to have a stronger chance of success? Good lord, we're not even close to halfway through and this story is already a fucking nonsensical mess. Remember in the first game how Joel and Ellie explored a variety of locations, towns, and cities as they tried to get to their destination? Well, there's none of that here, as we pick back up with Ellie and Dina right as they reach Seattle. Oh, also, Abby and her crew are members of a group called the Washington Liberation Front, or Wolves for short. Ellie finds that some WLF members are held up somewhere named Saravina, and opens up the gate to reunite with Dina, upon which they immediately find the Saravina Hotel. I would complain, but anything that makes this game go faster is a good thing in my book. Although, the gate they need to open is generator powered, and the generator is out of gas, so they have to explore a whole semi-open world Seattle to find gas. Really, the only thing of note in this entire map that isn't related to the main objective is the bank, as Ellie can get into the vault and find a memorable piece of jewelry. But the Uncharted board game was seen in the first one, and Ellie has copies of Uncharted and Uncharted 2 in her house in Jackson. So is Nathan Drake a real person or not? He can't be, because A Thief's End takes place in 2016, 3 years after the infection hit in this world. Man, not even the cool things make sense. Although there is a superhero card of the game director that labels him as a villain, and there's nothing more honest in this whole fucking game. They find an empty gas canister at an old ration distribution center and fill it with gas from a courthouse garage to finally open the gate and make it into the Saravina, where they find evidence that Tommy has already gone through, using the same interrogation technique that Joel used last game. They find another gate code and use it to continue throughout the city, just in time for the next bullshit scenario they shouldn't survive but somehow do. Ellie wakes up in an old elementary school and is about to be killed by this guy named Jordan when another guy walks in and stops him from doing it for reasons. But then 2 seconds later, he wants to kill Ellie and Jordan stops him from doing it. Didn't no one see the massive fucking discrepancy here? Dina shows up and shoots the unnamed one and, like an idiot, stands on glass, which goes as well as anyone with even half a brain cell would see it going. Luckily for Dina, Jordan immediately forgets how to use a gun afterwards, holstering it and trying to choke her out instead, turning his back to Ellie and giving her the perfect opportunity to kill him. People defend this game. She finds a photo of another WLF member that was at the cabin named Leah, and evidence that she's at a TV station, but they're interrupted by more wolves. They fight through the wolves and out of the school into some abandoned apartments, where they determine the location of the TV station by the fact that it's around really tall buildings, despite the fact that they're in Seattle, a city, which is almost entirely comprised of tall buildings in all directions. There's like an hour-long stretch where nothing of note, importance, or interest happens, and then they reach the TV station, filled with freshly strung bodies and Leah's freshly impaled body. Don't you love when a game has you dedicate hours towards something that is ultimately meaningless? They hear that a support team is en route and can either fight through them or just run for the exit, since they get spotted eventually regardless, and chased into some tunnels where they take out the wolves with help from some clickers. Oh, did you forget this was a zombie game? Yeah, I don't blame you. They don't matter in this fucking game in the slightest. Speaking of which, down here we get introduced to the one and only new type of infected, the Shambler. They're essentially an environmental variant of the bloater, where the heavy rainfall of the west coast influenced the infection. Instead of throwing spore bombs, they are the spore bombs, releasing toxic spore clouds that do massive damage over time. While I do think it's an interesting concept to have the environment influence the infection's evolution, I think rain was a terrible choice. Why? Because Ellie says she's never seen one before, despite being from Boston. The states along the coasts are by far the rainiest states in the US, and Massachusetts is one of the top ones. And really, only one new type? Why not go all the way and create a runner variant that's an adept swimmer, and a stalker variant that blends in with the marsh? Could it possibly be because the infected took a backseat to literally everything else in this zombie game? The rest of their tunnel excursion isn't too eventful, that is, until the train car Ellie's crossing gives way and she's attacked by a runner, breaking her gas mask.
I'm not infected. I'm immune.
Yeah, doesn't she already know that? Whatever. They get chased by a horde of runners and take shelter in an old theater, and Dina has some questions.
Okay. You're immune? Come on.
Oh, so good to know Dina's instinctual reaction to being told that Ellie's immune the first time was to assume she was lying. That's a great sign. But why is she having such a hard time with it? Shouldn't that be a good thing?
I think I'm pregnant.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't want to be a burden.
Well, you're a burden now, aren't you?
Fuck you, Ellie. It's not like you're planning a month-long operation here. You're just swooping in, snapping some necks, and bouncing. It's so early that there aren't even visual signs she's pregnant yet, so it's not like she's gonna be a huge weight around your neck. Plus, she isn't even that helpful in combat scenarios to begin with. But we need forced drama, I guess. Ellie once again finds a perfectly intact guitar to play, and it flashes us back 3 years into the best stretch of the game, bar none. You know why? Because it's the most like the first game.
Mind your step.
I got it.
Oops.
What is wrong with you?
You should see your face right now.
What if I drown?
I'm not gonna drown. You gotta work on that confidence, kiddo.
Looks like.
How's that feel?
Refreshing.
Yeah, it's not nice getting pushed in, is it?
Well, actually, we need to swim through this part anyway.
I got you back. You're angry and upset.
I'm very angry and upset.
Look at me! I'm on a motherfucking dinosaur! Oh, hello. Sorry, the dinosaurs are busy right now.
What are you doing?
Oh, wait. One of the dinosaurs is here. Joel, it's for you.
Very funny.
That was pretty funny. Did you get it? It's because you're old.
No, I get it.
Oh, also, Joel explains his entire game's existence.
See, there's a sequel. Wasn't as good.
Joel, look.
That is a hat on a dinosaur.
It's called a hatasaur. Tiny head.
Hey, is this gonna be a thing? Please don't let it be a thing. Whatever floats your boat.
This does. Floats it all day.
I see the appeal.
Told you.
For context, this is Joel's birthday surprise for Ellie, and there are a ton of little conversations to be had by exploring the museum. It's essentially a microcosm of what made the first game so special, really making you wonder why there isn't more of it!
I do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Things get tense when Ellie explores another section of the museum on her own as she looks for a way to let Joel in, capping off with a random boar jump scare. And just like that, the best section of the game is over as fast as it began, and we're back in Seattle for day 2. Ellie finds that Dina has been tracking the WLF's movements throughout the city, and that each section has a number attached. They're led to believe Tommy's in Sector 14, and Dina takes a total guess as to where that may be. I'll give you $0 if you can guess whether she's spot on or not. This is where my next major complaint comes in. Almost the entirety of this fucking game takes place in Seattle. Gone are the different cities, towns, and environments with different seasons. It's just 3 miserable days in rainy, overcast Seattle. Cause with a nonsensical chopped up plot carried by coincidences and plot armor, why bother having an interesting setting? Oh, also, you have to kill dogs now. Ellie fights through more WLF members and infected in one of the sporadic instances this zombie game remembers it's a zombie game, and equips a bow just in time to kill even more wolves because these developers looked at the frequency and scale of the fights from the first 3 Uncharted games and dared themselves themselves to go bigger. She eventually meets up with Jesse in a scene where, in the trailers, it was shown to be Joel. They steal a car and are attacked by all of the infected until they crash into a lake and pull themselves out. Ellie brings Jesse back to their theater, and suddenly we're 2 years in the past as Ellie's out on patrol with Tommy. Unlike before, though, this flashback isn't nearly as good, as Ellie and Joel's relationship is already fucking strange, and it doesn't feel earned because they didn't bother to show why! They head off together to find new strings for her guitar, though their journey through an infected-infested hotel dissuades them from continuing, just in time to be attacked by a bloater. Right before they leave, they find 2 bodies of Jackson runaways, leading to Ellie bringing up how Joel told her the Fireflies said there were dozens of immune people, and she has still not met another one. Instead of saying that maybe the Fireflies were Fireflyers, Joel reinforces his lie and says their tests proved there was no cure to be made. Now, yes, I get that it's Ellie's waning trust in Joel's lie that causes the schism in their relationship, but that shouldn't be something we see bits and pieces of. It was what you ended the last game on. It should be the focal point. Anyway, back in the present, Dina tells Ellie that one of the wolves there in the cabin, Nora, was sent to be stationed at the hospital, so she heads off for it. At night. Alone. Instead of waiting for the morning, where there's sunlight. And Jesse can help. Her trek is very boring until she crosses through an old convention center and runs into a group of stalkers, and then it becomes very bullshit. Stalkers are incredibly quiet and will sneak up from unsuspecting angles. Since they're so quiet, they don't appear in listen mode, though bottles and bricks can be thrown to lure them out of hiding temporarily. She's eventually attacked by one of the stalkers, and they both crash through the window down into the raging rapids that deposit Ellie right into some nice sewers. Because a horror game without sewers is like The Last of Us 2 having a good story. It just doesn't happen. She's not in there for long though, and emerges near a park, where we get introduced to the most unnecessary part of this game. The Seraphites, or as the WLF calls them, Scars. They're a religious cult that really only exists to get in Ellie's way and take even more time away from the infected. Ellie fights through wave after wave of the annoying Seraphites and their blasted whistles until she makes it inside the hospital, where she interrogates someone playing Hotline Miami and then kills her like she was in Hotline Miami, but doesn't think to pick up the PS Vita. I know it's not the greatest console, but how many working PS Vitas are you gonna find in the zombie apocalypse? Ellie eventually corners Nora and asks her where Abby is, saying she'll consider letting her go if she complies. And what was it that the Joker said that one time?
In their last moments, people show you who they really are.
So let's see how Nora acts when her life could end at any second.
You still hear his screams?
What?
I hear them every night. Yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved.
Oh cool, so I don't feel bad about beating your fucking skull in until it resembles more of a human Rorschach test than anything that was once living. Fun fact about this scene, actually, using the shortcuts that the game provides for you will cause Nora to zip ahead with superhuman speed because the game can't handle the fact that you actually used the things they offered you to use. 2020 Game of the Year, everyone. Actually, it kind of makes sense. This game is as much of a show disaster 2020 was. And while I don't feel bad about putting the annoying orange through a blender, Ellie sure does, and we flash back 2 years earlier. Again. Ellie searches through the hospital from the ending of the first game and finds a tape recorder exposing Joel's lie, and he shows up just in time for her to ask him about it. She demands the truth, and he tells her that making the vaccine would have killed her, and he couldn't allow that. And her reaction shows why Joel was kind of justified in lying.
Oh my god.
Now, yes, this is a powerful scene. Ellie finding out that her life essentially means the hope of restoring society is dead, even though creating a vaccine against a fungal infection like that isn't possible, and even if it was, the Fireflies lacked the equipment needed to mass produce it, so there was no way to guarantee everyone would take it, so Joel was justified in his decision. But just imagine if it happened in real time! We could have had a second game with Joel and Ellie together, and then towards the end, this scene happens and Ellie pushes Joel away. Then, if his death happened immediately after this, it would be heartbreaking and torture Ellie even more, leading leading to a potentially interesting story if done right. No matter what, it would still be better than the shit we got. Regardless, Ellie's emotional storm-off brings us back into the present day and day 3 of the Seattle operation, as Ellie and Jesse head off toward the aquarium, which is where Nora said Abby is hiding out. Nothing of importance happens because this game has a 12-hour plot stretched to 24 hours by the writers throwing every possible thing they can think of to stretch out this misery, and then they arrive at the mall. They hear a report that Tommy is nearby, but in a direction that Abby is not. But since Ellie is dumb and doesn't realize the smartest course of action is to secure their boat to the aquarium, hide it, and then go save Tommy so all 3 of them can confront Abby, Jesse goes off to find him while Ellie secures the boat and drives toward the aquarium, running into Seraphite and bloater-shaped obstacles along the way. The boat is capsized in the rough waters thanks to the arriving storm, but Ellie is able to swim to the aquarium and... Well, it was self-defense, and the dog was getting in my way of making Abby's insides her outside, so... sorry, not sorry. In the same vein, Ellie finds Owen and Mel, 2 people you'll grow to hate very soon. Owen tries to disarm Ellie, which goes as well as you'd expect, and Mel tries to take her out with a knife, which goes much the same way. Ellie finds out that Mel is pregnant, and I still feel nothing because she's guilty by association, but Ellie doesn't feel the same way. Luckily, she's saved by Tommy and Jesse, proving my point that Jesse and Ellie splitting up was fucking stupid because they arrived at their destination within seconds of each other. Anyway, Neil Druckmann cries over his own game, and we cut to the next morning where Tommy now wants to leave? What? He traveled all this way because he couldn't let the wolves get away with killing Joel, and now there's only one fucking wolf left to kill, he wants to run away! God, it's like this game only goes in one direction, and that direction is towards the nearest dumpster.
Jesse, stand up! Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Yeah, the next half of this fucking game is dedicated to playing as the walking energy vacuum that is Abby and seeing all the boring and cringy ass shit she and her dumb ass friends go through during the 3 days Ellie is in Seattle. Not only does the game continuously flash back to shit, it gets to a dramatic climax and fucking rewinds to the beginning of the game. Now we have to play through the game essentially all over again, this time as a character we're going to hate with every fiber of our being with absolutely no stakes because we know exactly where it's going! And since this video is long enough as is and I don't feel like signing up for therapy, let's rush through this literal shit. 4 years in the past, Abby, Owen, and Abby's dad save a zebra, and we find out that Abby's dad was one of the Firefly scientists that was going to kill Ellie in the last game. In fact, he's the very fuckwad that convinced Marlene to go ahead with the surgery without telling Ellie it would kill her. We then flash forward to Abby discovering her dad's corpse, and I proceed to still feel absolutely nothing for that bitch. In fact, seeing that gives me an idea. Ah, much better. And then they show us Abby beating Joel to death again, like we're suddenly going to understand her motivation, instead of just having our hatred fire reignited stronger than ever. Simply put, one was to save a life. The other was cold-blooded, premeditated murder. Abby wakes up in the present and we get to hear about the man who literally spit on Joel's corpse, which really symbolizes his whole game, and his sexcapades, because that's what people waited 7 years for. Abby and Manny go out on patrol with the very pregnant Mel, because that's what a safe, responsible, soon-to-be parent would do. Put your desire to be in combat ahead of the safety of your child. And I'm supposed to feel bad that she laid in the bed that she made? And if you think they're going into a low-risk area, you're dead wrong, because their truck crashes almost immediately thanks to a Seraphite attack. Oh, and also the whole zombie apocalypse thing! You know what? How about we make sure that baby is extra dead?
Go.
It's a good thing Ellie killed Mel when she did. It prevented her from giving birth to fucking ground beef. They make their way to an FOB as I try desperately not to enter a deep depression from playing as these SOBs. Seriously, whose bright idea was it to have us interact with these wolves after we've seen them die? That immediately prevented me from getting attached to them, and they were starting with a huge disadvantage to begin with! Also, Nora shows Abby the result of Ellie's handiwork.
Holy shit. It's Danny.
Who the fuck is Danny? I didn't leave anything about him out. He doesn't fucking exist in this story. yet I'm supposed to be impacted by his death and feel bad? Abby meets with Isaac, the leader of the WLF, who tells her that Owen shot Danny and is currently AWOL. Abby doesn't believe it and heads off toward the aquarium, prompting another boring ass flashback, this time about Abby and Owen's awkward romance I couldn't give two shits about. Back in the present, but still 3 days in the past, Abby fights wave after wave of Seraphites until a small group of them manage to get the upper hand and knock her ass out so hard we flash back. Again. God, I just want this to be over. This one reveals that Abby figured out Tommy was in Jackson, Wyoming because some people Tommy used to work with like 10 years ago just happened to stumble into Seattle and revealed that a random guy is living somewhere. Game of the year. Back in the 3 days ago, Abby's about to be hanged by the Seraphites when she's saved by two Seraphites, Yara and Lev. Hear that? Saved by Seraphites. She would be dead if not for those Seraphites. Seraphites saved her life. Sound familiar? So if this was the same character we saw kill Joel, she would immediately kill Yara and Lev since she's been hunting their cult for years, they've killed many of her friends, and when someone she's been hunting saves her life, she clearly doesn't give a fuck. So why doesn't she kill them? Anyway, all you need to know about Yara and Lev is that Yara's arm is fucking minced meat and Lev is transgendered. So there's that. It doesn't really add anything to the game, but it doesn't take anything away either. Abby brings them to a trailer and leaves them behind as she continues on and finds Owen in the aquarium, where they proceed to have the most random and awkward sex scene outside of Ride to Hell Retribution as Abby gets fucked naughty doggy style. Oh, and did I mention that Owen is the father of Mel's child? Cause seeing someone cheat is definitely going to make me feel bad for killing them. Nice moral message there, naughty dog. Abby wakes up the next day and randomly feels guilty for leaving Lev and Yara behind, so she goes back to find them and brings them to the aquarium. And Mel just so happened to arrive at the aquarium in the meantime and is the perfect person needed to operate on Yara's arm. Mel says she's going to have to amputate Yara's arm, and Abby agrees to go to the WLF-controlled hospital to get the supplies needed with Lev's help. Abby arrives at the hospital with Lev staying back so the WLF don't see him, but she's arrested and scheduled to be sent back to Isaac because she kinda went AWOL to find Owen. So they handcuff her and leave her in the hospital? Why not just bring her back? Nora saves Abby and tells her the supplies she needs are in Ground Zero, the location of the first infection in Seattle, leading to a boss fight against a special variant of infected known as the Rat King, which is fitting because I'd rather crack my fucking nuts than play this game again. Abby gets the supplies and returns to the aquarium. The surgery goes off without a hitch, and the next day, Mel tells Abby that Owen invited Yara and Lev to join him on his journey to Santa Barbara. It was mentioned briefly earlier, but basically there are rumors that the Fireflies are reforming in Santa Barbara and Owen wants to check it out. Also, Mel drops the best line in this entire section of the game.
You're a piece of shit, Abby.
For the one and only time in your life, you aren't wrong, Mel. Also, Lev leaves to return to the Seraphites' home island base to talk to his mom, and Abby and Yara go off to find him, as she forces Owen to stay behind for no good fucking reason. They head out and Abby is saved from a sniper by Manny Ex Machina. Yes, I know the WLF reported that sniper, so it's not unbelievable that he was there. What is unbelievable is that he is the only one there, and that he happened to be in the perfect spot at the perfect time to save Abby. But you know what? After all these hours of pain, I need a little catharsis. A little help, Tommy? Let's go. Yeah. Can I see that again? Let's go. One more time. Let's go. Ah, that felt good. Abby reaches Tommy and pushes him into the water, then decides to completely ignore him and drive off toward the boat. So what the fuck was the point of that section? Abby fights through an annoying amount of Seraphites and finds Lev, who accidentally killed their mother. Hey, can we kill another member of this bloodline right quick? Thank you! Still feel nothing over her death. Isaac dies too, and Abby is now more dedicated to a kid she met 2 days ago than she is to the friends and people she's worked with for years! She kills loads of wolves after this with no remorse! Why am I supposed to like this character? They reach Haven, the center of the island, and ride through the burning town to get a boat, Abby having to turn someone into the Joker before they can do that. They happen to find that there's one completely intact boat in the center of the docks that are currently being burned to fuck, and ride back to the aquarium. Abby finds Owen and Mel's dead fucking bodies, and I still don't feel a goddamn thing because they were terrible people. Oh, also, Ellie left her fucking map behind! You know, the one they can use to track her right back to her hideout? Now that shit show is finally over and we're back to where we were like 12 gameplay hours ago. Tommy gets an arrow to the knee and shot in the back of the head from point blank range. But guess what? He survives that! Jesse got shot from a further distance and died immediately. So how the f does Tommy survive? Oh, but that isn't even the worst part. The worst part of this game hasn't even happened yet. Abby chases Ellie down, leading to the first boss fight I have ever played where I actively wanted to lose, as you have to play as Abby and attack Ellie. Because that's what people waited 7 years for, to beat the shit out of the characters they loved. F this game.
She's pregnant. Good.
Abby!
Don't ever let me see you again.
Oh, f off. Abby just said she let Ellie and Tommy live last time and they wasted it. So why is she letting them live again? And you know what? Ellie fucking listens to her! Now she lives inside a fucking postcard with Dina and her child, JJ. But there's trouble in paradise as Ellie has severe PTSD over Joel's death, and Dina, like a great wife, makes no effort to talk about it. Tommy then shows up out of absolutely nowhere and tells Ellie that he tracked Abby to Santa Barbara, and he's now gung-ho on Ellie going after her and killing her, after spending the entire game telling Ellie not to do that! Why the fuck does Tommy's character do so many fucking 180s without any explanation? That night, Ellie knows she won't have closure unless she gets revenge on the person who killed Joel, that thing she knew the entire fucking game but forgot when the person told her to, and like a good wife, Dina says she's leaving Ellie if she goes to find Abby. Speaking of that dipshit, we play as her again as her and Lev search houses in Santa Barbara until they find a radio and contact the Fireflies, who give them an extraction point. They leave and are attacked by random enemies, leading to the most hilarious scene in this whole fucking game. Alright, now like, play that 5 times in a row. Thank you. Ellie arrives in Santa Barbara and fights through this totally new and random group of enemies that add not a single fucking iota of value to the game until she finds Abby tied to a post on the beach. And instead of just leaving there to die, which is Ellie's goal anyway, she sets her free and challenges her to a fight. Yet Abby has to be the bigger woman and doesn't want to fight, though Ellie convinces her by threatening Lev. And this is the start of the worst fucking thing in this game. A wholly unsatisfying final boss where Ellie has 2 of her fucking fingers bitten off, and right as Ellie is about to kill Abby, she suddenly realizes that revenge is bad and lets Abby ride off into the fucking sunset with Lev while she sits there broken. Then Ellie returns to her house to see it completely fucking abandoned, and she tries to play Joel's guitar one more time, only she can't because 2 of her fingers are missing. So she leaves the guitar and fucks off to nowhere, broken and alone as the credits roll. Fuck this game. Once more with feeling, fuck this game. They tried so hard to subvert expectations when in the end the only expectation they subverted was the expectation for a good fucking game. The whole second half of the game relies on your ability to just get over Joel's death and see Abby as a good person, after the entire first half did the exact fucking opposite. It's like if someone tied you up and made you watch as they slowly tortured your mother or father, and then you were forced to watch them play with puppies, be in an awkward love triangle, and mess around with some kids. Would you think, oh, they're actually a good person? I'm sure they had a valid reason for savagely beating my parents. Or would you think, fuck this person, I'm going to beat them and everyone they care about to death with a rusty fucking spoon if it's my only option. And if you cannot get over Joel's death, the second half of the game is some of the most torturous fucking gameplay in existence, as you are forced to play as someone you desperately want to fail. Yeah, sure, it's fun to beat the shit out of people with Abby's huge ass arms, but it's all fucking meaningless since I couldn't possibly give less of a shit about her or anything she's going through if a fucking gun was put to my head. The writer's desperate and transparent attempts to try to get us to sympathize with Abby and her crew are just pathetic. They're all terrible fucking killing people, who can't stop virtual signaling, or spewing shitty dialogue even the CW wouldn't let past the cutting room floor long enough to be tolerable characters. Always a creepy, cheating piece of clicker shit. Mel's inconsiderate and a hypocritical bitch. Manny can't go 5 fucking seconds without saying pendejo or making a shitty joke, and Abby. Fuck Abby. Seriously, they made every wrong fucking step with Abby that they could. The game is a story about right and wrong, yet it's done by a group of writers who always think they're right. And is a story about how revenge is bad, so why the fuck isn't it bad for Abby? They paint her actions against Joel as justified and good, and at no point does she express any remorse for her actions, not even so much as an apology or an explanation. Oh, so she loses her shitty ass friends and her braid. Well, guess what? You can get new friends and grow your hair back. You know what you can't get back? A unique and loving father figure, your wife and child, and your fucking fingers. And the Abby from the beginning of the game is nothing like the Abby in her sections of the game. And instead of seeming like they're showing another side of her character, it seems more like yet another character that had to act drastically different to make that shitty fucking death happen. But even still, Abby's a piece of shit. While Joel murdered her father, he did it to save a loved one. Abby killed Joel out of cold-hearted revenge, and Naughty Dog refusing to see that massive fucking moral difference is a huge red flag. And she chooses to mercilessly slaughter hundreds of her friends to protect some kid she just met the other day. Yes, it's supposed to mirror Joel and Ellie, but it falls completely fucking flat. Joel and Ellie essentially had a year to bond, not 3 fucking days. Wouldn't it have made more sense if Abby lost Lev at the end of the game, or if Abby died saving Lev? But no, she's the one who gets to escape this shit show. Every character we care about from the first game is done a huge disservice and has their entire character fucking assassinated. Everyone is either broken down or dead, and there is no in between. Fuck Ellie and her bullshit drama. Fuck Tommy and his continuous fucking 180s in character to drive plot, and fuck Dina for refusing to talk to her wife through her PTSD. The only new character I liked was Jesse, and he just died with absolutely no fanfare or recognition. Stepping away from the stain on the carpet of life that is this game's plot for a moment, where the fuck is the innovation in this game? It's a sequel! There's nothing new added except for the ability to lie down. Great, just great. And with such a shitty fucking plot, filled with more plot holes, plot armor, and random coincidences than all the Uncharted games combined, it makes the gameplay get repetitive and boring a hell of a lot faster. It got to the point where I was so fucking disconnected from the game that I would just sprint through stealth sections to try to find the exit as quickly as possible. And what makes the lack of innovation so much fucking worse is that the available weapons are split. Ellie gets a small handful, and Abby gets all the fucking best ones. And seriously, the Shambler was the only new infected you could come up with. Would this game not have been better if it picked up right where the first game left off? Maybe you can get away with skipping ahead a few months or 1 year, but not 4! Focus on Ellie as she learns to come into her own and be an independent survivor. Have her find out that Joel lied to her, but something forces them together and they work through their trust issues as the game goes on. And then introduce Abby as a Sam-like figure, someone Ellie finds on her journey and becomes friends with as they try to accomplish a shared goal, and keep Abby's goal specifically vague. And then, when Ellie's relationship with Joel is fully mended and stronger than ever, and it seems like a happy ending, bam! Abby kills Joel. It would be shocking. It would subvert expectations. It would feel heartbreakingly earned, and it would build up hype for a third game where Ellie gets her revenge on Abby. This way, you don't have to force the plot to make sense by jamming in flashbacks wherever you fucking could to chop up the pace even more, and Joel would have been given the respect that he fucking deserves. Also, if this game really respected Joel and the relationship he had with Ellie, there would have at least been a scene where Abby says, "Joel killed my dad," and Ellie would have responded with, "And you killed mine." Not only does it tie into Abby being turned into Joel, it pays off the beautiful relationship we saw in the first game, instead of treating it like shit. Overall, The Last of Us Part 2 fittingly gets a 2 out of 10, and I'm being fucking nice. Yes, this game has some of the most beautiful graphics you will ever see, a talented cast, and incredible detail, but none of that fucking matters when I couldn't possibly give less of a rat's ass about anything that's happening. I played large stretches of this game on autopilot. Only hours later would I realize that I had spaced out and had no memory of what I had just gone through. It was a chore to finish, and I could actively feel myself getting getting older with every second that ticked by in this shitfest. It was a pointless game that essentially wasted my time and killed my love of the franchise faster than it killed Joel. I don't care about these characters anymore. I don't care about this world anymore. I don't care about these games anymore. If a third game comes out, I wouldn't hold your breath for a video on it, because odds are I will look the other way. But that's it. It's done, and I never have to talk about it again. The Last of Us Part 2 came out in 2020, though from this moment on, I will never acknowledge its existence. Next Friday is December 17th, and I'm pretty sure there's some movie coming out on that day. It's a small indie film, you probably haven't heard of it. I hope to see you there.
Continue?
No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head.